What's up, Fantasyland? We're back in the district for a monster high stakes roundtable tonight. We've got two huge guests back. Let's get right into it.
Go district, you know the Pope listens. Dynasty, our religion, for the blokes missing. On all of these trades, on all of these plays, on all of these grades. By the end of the day, y'all getting played. So, what you gonna do next? Try to fill up that flex? Send the homie a text? That trash offer's the best? You try to make it complex, then they text you back. Now all of a sudden they don't make any sense. Broaden your horizons, boy. Dynasty's not for the Simons, boy. These trades not for consignment, boy. Respect your opponent, y'all some piranhas, boy. This my advice from me to you. Open up your cute little podcast queue. Search up GOAT District, my dude. Pop it in your ear, man. Y'all know what to do. It's the and I always be traded. And I always be traded. And I always be trading. Y'all try to betray them, but first you gotta bait them. Fish.
It's not Fantasyland. We're back in the district, and it's that time of year where every injury, every TD, every yard can either cost you, make you money, get you to the next round, or completely eliminate you. And whether you're in the playoffs right now, you know, it's that time of year, right? It's the holidays. You're winding down in fantasy. You're in the playoffs. Am I still on?
Yeah, you're still on, JD. Yeah, it's a pressure packed week, even in the studio, fellas.
Sorry, guys. I don't know what happened there, guys. Apologies for that. What I was gonna say, guys, whether you're in the playoffs or not, or whether you're in Dynasty or not, or NFFC or not, you're gonna want to watch tonight. We're gonna dive into 2023. Like Chris said before we came on, we're maybe 3 weeks early, maybe 3 months early. It's never too early, guys, to get ahead of your league mates. That's what we're going to help you do tonight with two of the best in the game. Theo, apology for screwing up this big entrance, but you can take this home, buddy, by walking these guys in proper.
Yeah, so today we're taking a look at 2023 ADP. We're going to not only predict where we think the market is headed, but we're going to give you some of our early ranks. And we've got two of the best players in the entire country joining us tonight. We're specifically looking at the NFFC. So anybody who's kind of watched us, over the years, we've had a number of NFFC guests in. I play NFFC. Dan plays NFFC. And it's a start 3 wide receiver format with a flex. It's a 6-point passing touchdown format. And it attracts some of the best players in the whole country. They have a Hall of Fame in the NFFC. There's not a whole lot of names in there, but 2 of them are with us tonight. We have BiLLY WASOSKY, who's the defending RotoWire online championship winner. He's been in the GOAT District many times over. And then we have Chris EiBL, who's pretty much won everything you can in multiple NFFC formats. I think he's won pretty much every NFFC format there is. And he's also done great in other formats, in non-NFFC. These 2 guys have the receipts to show for it. These guys are 2 of the top 10 money winners in the history of the NFFC. You don't get into the Hall of Fame, because, they like you. You get into the Hall of Fame because you're very successful and you're a shark and you're just a killer in these drafts. So I'm really happy you guys were able to join us tonight. I enjoyed competing with you guys this year about as much as I can enjoy it. But I really respect your guys' opinions, and it's awesome to have you here. Welcome, BiLLY. Welcome back to the GOAT District.
Great to be back. Great to be alongside Chris and you guys. It's always a pleasure coming on and talking some football.
We already have some victims, Theo, in the chat that have been victims to our guest tonight.
There's a lot of victims if you play against BiLLY and Chris. Losing to those guys is nothing to hang your hat on. It's happened to all of us. BiLLY is in the New York Super, and Chris is in the New York Super this year with Frank Mamola splitting a team. and we all drafted together in New York. Billy won the regular season. We're both competing in the playoffs now. Chris, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. We're talking about 2023 ADP. I was commentating to you guys before this started that it's only a month away from drafts opening up at NFFC, FFPC. So this studying really isn't too early for me.
And Dan, we always talk about trying to set the ADP with our early best ball drafts. So this is like setting the ADP before we set the ADP. How are you doing tonight, Dan?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. That's what it is, and doing great. Yeah, I'm excited. I came off of this last week, watching the Minnesota game, watching JT go out 3 plays into the game after 1 touch, and then my Vikings getting just absolutely destroyed during the first half. I was ready to quit fantasy football. I was ready to throw a brick through the TV. But despite all that, my week ended up going spectacularly well overall. So happy about that. It's sometimes the way it starts ain't the way it ends. So
Dan and I went 3 for 3 in our high stakes dinos playoffs.
Yeah, the eliminations. Yep.
We needed watching to get under 18 points, and it just worked out perfect deal.
So just pre-show, when do you start drafting, Chris? Are you trying to get into the very first NFFC leagues offered, some of the first FFPC ones offered?
Yeah, I'm usually in the first for NFFC as soon as they open. It's typically right after the Super Bowl. They have a $150 best ball contest, and I'm just doing as many of those as I can during dinner time. I'm making picks in January and early February, I would say, and probably doing those straight through summer.
And Billy, I know we were in like one of the first draft champions against each other last year. Do you take any time off, or are you trying to jump into that early one as well?
I generally wait a little bit longer. I do the Trendsetters League that we do, and we start literally the minute the Super Bowl ends, it starts. We do about 6 rounds, and then we take 2 weeks off, and then do 6 more rounds, and so on. And you're drafting rookie slots, like rookie 1, and then once the NFL draft happens, then you select which rookie you want. Rookie 1 goes first, rookie 2, and so on and so on. But as far as jumping in the DCs, I probably will jump in a little bit earlier this year. Maybe try to avoid Chris as much as possible. I know he's in like all of them, but I'll try to. Maybe I'll jump in a few here and there. But I generally wait a little bit longer than he does, with the exception of Trendsetters.
And Dan, you're not only getting in the early ones, but you're emailing the administration trying to get them to set up.
January. I was just checking, Dan. January 24th is when we did the hard way, which you and I right now are battling for first, by the way.
Oh yeah, that's right. I'm always pushing the guys at the FFPC to get their act together. Come on, guys, let's go. And they keep telling me it's something about some kind of playoff challenge, and they gotta worry about that first. I don't know what they're talking about, man. It's best ball season. Let's go.
Promoting the wrong things, guys. Promoting the wrong things. So why don't we just dive right into it? This year has been wild. It seems like there's been an excessive amount of injuries. There's been a few absolute duds. I mean, we could go over some of the draft misses, the Kyle Pittses, the Elijah Moores, guys that really hurt specific teams. That's a whole different show. But we're just diving into the rankings. Before we dive into kind of predicting the market, there's a few guys that I thought were pretty polarizing that I thought we could spend a little time talking on. The first name that kind of jumps out to me is a person that I found difficult to rank. And it's also a little bit difficult for me to gauge how the high-stakes market's going to view him, is Josh Jacobs. He's averaging 21.1 points per game, and he's the running back 2 overall. He's got one of the highest percentages in Fantasy Mojo lists, the players on the most championship teams. Josh Jacobs was obviously a cheat code. You were drafting him in the 6th round, sometimes later. He'll be 25 years old next year. Is he an obvious Deebo Samuel-like regression candidate? Or is he a potential target because maybe the market won't value him for someone of his production? Start with Chris.
I lean on the target side. I think with a guy like Deebo who had a fluke season not really a fluke season. He's clearly talented, but there were a number of reasons you could look to why 2022 wasn't necessarily going to be the same for him. Whether it was having a new QB, it was, he happens. I don't like to factor injuries too much, but he is very clearly the most violent play style receiver in football, and those factors, combined with talk of Ayuk really sort of coming along in camp, made me avoid Debo. I need more reasons to avoid Josh Jacobs next year. It's if he comes back to the Raiders in the same role, it's clear that the first couple weeks they were sprinkling in Bolden and Abdullah a little more on passing downs. He's really developed into a 4, 5, 6, catch a game type player. And if there's no indication that his role is going to change going into next year, then I think he has the potential to be a value, because I do think he's not necessarily going to be valued as high as his production was this year.
Billy, what are your thoughts?
Chris summed that up pretty well. As a person who did not own barely any Josh Jacobs this year, my reasons for not wanting him this past year, just talk about this for a second, was, they brought in Devontae Adams. Waller was hurt all last year and he was catching all these passes. Well, you bring Josh McDaniels in, you figure, he's going to spread it around like the New England way. You're going to have Zamir White. You're going to have Amir Abdullah. But like Chris said, this he's catching 5-6 passes a game, and he's just a workhorse in this offense. And, I think the thing that really spooked me on him this past year was that Hall of Fame game where he was in on that first drive. And I'm like, what is this guy, third string? I mean, I was like, what is going on with this? Like, nobody plays in that first game. No starters anyway. And that really threw me off. So I agree with Chris. He's a guy who I think you can just look at him and he's just a workhorse. He plays hurt. I mean, he was banged up a little bit with that calf for a while. Didn't seem to slow him down at all. And Chris said all the things about Debo I would have said as well. Debo was a definite regression candidate this year. I think Jacobs is definitely a guy that you could, late second round, who knows where he's going to go. It's going to be interesting to see. But I think he's, once you start getting to those names of the running backs, it's like, who else are you going to take? I mean, after the first 5 or 6 are gone. So.
Yeah, Dan, you've talked about this for months now, about how you kind of been kicking yourself over it. You've always kind of been kind of like apprehensive to take him, and then you realize that you should have trusted your gut.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't really kick myself because, like Billy, I just, I saw all these reasons, the steady drumbeat of just, negative stuff going on, and as the stockpile is saying in the comments, Zamir White got drafted. We know that Josh McDaniel has often used a running back by committee. The offensive line was not good. There's just a million reasons not to take Jacobs and hardly any reasons to take him. So kudos to the people who saw through all that, or, whatever. They got, I kind of feel like they got bailed out a little bit. Everything broke their way, but good on them. But next year, yeah, I'm definitely going to be in on Jacobs as long as he's in the same situation. If they give him a franchise tag or something like that, or sign him to a long-term deal, I don't see any reason not to be in on him, because that tells us that he's probably going to be a little bit more of a workhorse again. And so why not? I mean, you're probably taking him over even, like guys like Joe Mixon, Jerick McKinnon. You might even take him over that guy.
Now calm down, Dan.
Now you're talking crazy.
That's crazy
right.
talk, Dan.
I think that, we actually, this came up on one of the other high stakes roundtables, kind of like lessons you've learned this year. And I think that certain coaches treat the preseason differently. So I think, like, whatever Josh McDaniels does next preseason, just let him do his thing and ignore it. Mike Tomlin is also the same boat, where he played Najee when Najee was hurt, and he just put him out there to get reps. So I think some of these coaches actually do believe that you have to get these running backs reps in the preseason. So I'll ignore that. I would tend to agree with Chris and Billy. And also, I'll say that Josh Jacobs shown us his receiving ability now for 2 years in a row. So it's kind of hard to be out on him. And, it'll be interesting to see, like, where you guys place him in tonight, if he makes your top 12 in the ADP. For me, he's not in my predicted top 12 ADP. I don't think he'll be a first rounder. So that makes him a little even more appealing. You could get potentially that kind of volume and that sort of, production in the second round. So I guess I'm in on Josh Jacobs, guys. I'm officially flag planting, in December of 2022 for this summer's drafts. Anything to add on Josh Jacobs, JD?
No, I mean, just in theme with what we've been talking about the show, the 25-year-old and his age it's mattering less and less right at the running back position as we're seeing, and the workhorse, the value of a workhorse running back. So if he does stay in the same situation, you like it. If we start hearing that he's not coming back to Vegas and then there's more question marks, I'll wait till later in the season to be invested, maybe at the higher end. The thing with Jacobs is you worry that he went from one extreme to like a great value coming in this season, and then maybe going a little too high going into next season. And to me, that probably means that I'll probably have a similar ownership percentage as I did last year, this year going into the season. But things change, right? Especially at the running back position. So it's going to be interesting seeing where these guys, especially we're talking already top 12 tonight, and we're already probably going to hear some differences, right? To see if he's there or not.
So another guy that I found interesting in ranking, where maybe if we did this process 8 weeks ago, it would have been a lot less red flags, was Cooper Kupp. He's averaged 22.4 points per game this year. He averaged 26.4 last year in one of the best wide receiver seasons of all time in fantasy football in 2021. Despite his incredible production, there are some red flags. He'll be coming off of an injury. He's another year older, and I have major doubts about what Matt Stafford's involvement is next year. I think there's some drum beats that he could maybe take a year off or who knows what. The Rams have a lot of holes. It just is a situation where I feel like people are not going to be diving in as much as they would have, 8 weeks ago. Am I wrong here? Start out with BiLLY, Cooper Kupp.
No, there's definitely some red flags. I mean, I was looking back to his I gotta look at it real fast. I can't remember the year. I'm terrible with the years. His 2019 season, where he was phenomenal, 94 for 1161 and 10.
He was a wide receiver one that year as well.
Yeah. And that was with Jared Goff. So the question is, who's going to be quarterback? That's a huge factor here. And if I'm Matthew Stafford, I mean, you won your Super Bowl. This is your neck. You've done what you need to do, in my opinion. But, these guys are competitive. They might want to come back. If he comes back, yes, I think you can put Kupp back in there if he's, 100% ready to go. I'm talking about Stafford. Now, if you have Baker Mayfield, different story. But Cooper Kupp is Cooper Kupp. I mean, he can get open. And, you give Baker or whoever some reps with him in the offseason, he could be decent. So he's a polarizing one for me. As far as the first round, he's right there on the edge for me, just not to spoil anything, but I think the talent's there for sure, but it's just a matter of that getting that timing down, and him and Stafford had that so well, but he did it with Goff as well, so maybe it's just just a matter of getting a full season of working with a good decent quarterback. And dare I say, I'm saying Baker Mayfield might be decent, but he's certainly better than Bryce Perkins and John Wolford.
By a little bit.
By a little bit.
Chris, your thoughts on Cooper Kupp?
For me, it is purely dependent on Stafford's health. I don't have any interest in drafting Cooper Kupp high if he's playing with a new quarterback. I don't think there's anything in his metrics or separation ability to suggest he's going to be a superstar playing with anyone. His value is truly in his mind meld with Stafford and breakfast clubs and all that stuff. And so I have him pretty high because I do expect Stafford to play, but it's the news I will be watching. Spinal cord contusion obviously sounds serious. I did hear him say today on his wife's podcast confidently that he is coming back, like it wasn't a question, but it certainly sounds like an injury to monitor throughout the offseason.
That's how dedicated Chris is. He's listening to Matt Stafford's wife's podcast. That's a man you want to follow.
You have to tune into Kelly Stafford if you're getting up-to-date information for your 2023 fantasy football draft.
I love it.
Dan, your thoughts on Cooper Kupp? I'm assuming he's in your top 12. Did you have apprehension in where you ranked him?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can rank Cooper Kupp without some kind of apprehension. I mean, I think Sean McVay is one variable, and Matt Stafford's another. And if they're both back, then I'm going to be drafting him pretty aggressively. If one or the other of them is not back, I think that's probably going to influence me at least some. And if both of them aren't back, that's probably going to influence me even a little bit more. Because he has been at his best in that McVay offense. He did enough before that to prove to me that this is not some kind of a fluke. This is not just a system-driven thing, but system probably will matter for him some. And so if all the pieces aren't in place, I'm probably going to drop him down some.
JD, anything to add on Kupp?
Theo, 2 words for you: Baker Mayfield. Okay, that's all I got to say.
Yeah. I think I'm with you on that. If it's Baker Mayfield, I mean, you could give him a very high target share, which of course he's going to get no matter who the quarterback is. I just have a kind of apprehension, and I also think that he's going to be going around some other wide receivers this year. I think that the truly elite guys are more appealing than him already right now, just in terms of next season. And then I think that he's going to be going around some younger wide receivers that I'm just going to be kind of bullish on, and I have less red flags about the team situation. So I'm worried about Cooper Kupp for sure. One other player that I wanted your guys' opinion on was Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry, it seems like he's been a popular guy that high-stakes fantasy players have been lower on than a traditional home league, and that's been for a couple of years now. He came back from injury this year to average 19.3 points per game. He turns 29 this January, and he's at about 1,700 career carries. Where will high-stakes drafters value him in early drafts? And do you view him as a regression candidate or a value due to his unique ability and maybe the tendency for the market to undervalue his production? Similar to a Josh Jacobs question. Start with Billy on this.
I mean, I think we all here kind of, I don't want to say disrespect Derrick Henry, but we always look at he doesn't catch passes. That's the first thing everybody goes to. I think his name alone in a lot of drafts, put him in the first round. However, I think just like this year, I think you're gonna hear the talk about he said so many carries, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, the bottom line is he's 4th right now in NFFC scoring by, he's comfortably 4th. So we're talking about a player that just gets it done every year. And for some reason, we always kind of skirt around him. And Theo, I don't know if you remember this. In our last primetime draft in Vegas, I was picking 8th in the 2nd round, and I wanted Tyreek Hill to fall to me, and he went 1 pick in front of me, and I went all the way down to the clock with about 5 seconds left, and I begrudgingly took Derrick Henry, But it turned out to be a good pick. I mean,
yeah.
But it's
you run pure, Billy. Even when you don't.
Well, I took DJ Moore in the 3rd, so I'm not that pure. So, anyway, the thing about Derrick Henry is like it's just you take him and you almost are holding your nose, and I really don't know why. I guess it's just because of that team. He can get game scripted out of a game pretty quickly if they get behind early. But to answer the question, I think in most drafts he will be a late first rounder, but I definitely see him slip into the 2nd round again.
Chris, thoughts on the big dog?
Yeah, it's something I clearly got wrong this year, but I anticipate honestly probably fading him a bit next year. And it's not so much the carries or the age, because you watch him play and he's still got it. It is that risk, that added risk that some of the other backs don't have of, if something happens to the line and the team's not necessarily as good as they've been, like him more than any other running back, his stats are really going to fall if his team is in situations where they fall behind. And that added element of risk that really hasn't come to fruition in the past couple of years is probably just going to put him down behind a few of those younger running backs for me.
Dan, anything on the big dog?
Yeah, I mean, this year I had no exposure to him. I think yet next year I will try to have at least a little bit of exposure to him. Just because of the fact that if everything does go his way, I mean, he's a smash guy for you. He can win you weeks. He can win you leagues. And those guys aren't just hanging off every branch either. So I think you kind of have to be looking at your first couple 3 rounds through that lens of which of these guys if things go right could really make a big difference for my team.
Yeah, I think that he'll remain having his high touchdown upside, and I think that kind of Tennessee will tell you, with their actions this offseason. But if Tennessee completely ignores the running back position, that's an offense that I think could get better. So I think there might be a situation kind of like Jacobs. Chris made the point that Jacobs might become a value just because the market's kind of going to undervalue his production versus where he's going to go. I might be more apt to draft, a 29-year-old Derrick Henry next year when I think he's going to be living in that second round again next year, just due to his age. I don't have him in the top 12, and there's a chance that he's already sort of breaking the mold of what we look at for aging running backs. So I think he continue to do so next year. And I love seeing a guy produce when he comes off of injury. And, he played only about half the year last year, and then has played like pretty much the entire season this year. So I think I'm in next year. JD, in or out on the big dog next year?
Yeah, as much as like Dan, I've got 2% ownership right now on FFPC. You look at what he's done. We talk about difference makers, and that's what you're trying to get in these early rounds. He's giving you 3 weeks where he's between 21 and 25 fantasy points, 4 weeks where he's between 25 and 30, and then he's giving you a week of 30 plus points. So when you put that together, that's 5, 8. That's 8 out of 14 weeks where that's a difference making dude that you drafted. And the age is kind of the deceiving thing, right? Especially for us high stakes guys, because we prefer the younger running backs. And, I think it's going to depend on where other positions go. We talk about how quarterbacks are going to creep up and, some of these top guys and these difference makers at other positions like Kelsey in the tight end premium league. So it's going to be interesting to see where these older running backs that are giving us production now that we're talking about tonight, where they're going to end up in these drafts. I don't see me owning a lot of Henry just because of, again, I'm an ageist, man, when it comes to running back. Theo, what do you want me to say?
Yeah, and I think that's a whole nother interesting show. Is kind of, you could have a whole show on running backs 26 and older. Are you in or out? Because next year there's going to be an absolute lot of them, with a ton of running backs being drafted on day 1 and day 2, and a lot of free agent movement at the running back position. So running back's going to be interesting in general. It's hard for us to project kind of, the movement, but it's definitely super interesting. That's a good segue. JD brings up quarterback. We've talked about this with a number of high stakes roundtable about how we anticipate the QB position. We won't call it early QB, but we'll call it earlier QB drafting. Will return next year. We had great seasons from Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts. The upper echelon QBs gave high stakes teams a sizable advantage this season. There was a few later round guys that hit, Tua Tagovailoa, Justin Fields certainly had their moments, but the safest thing to do this year and the best payout was just drafting one of these early studs. Where do you anticipate Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and Jalen Hurts, the upper echelon QBs, being drafted next year in NFFC format? Start with Chris on this one.
I think you'll see and this was easier to figure out as I was sort of sketching out my top 12. There are a lot of running backs at that turn that are kind of exciting and offer 3-down potential. And I think right after that break is probably the mid-second round where people can start to search elsewhere for big advantages at other positions. So I would anticipate seeing Allen, Mahomes mid-second. I do think Hurts will go a little bit later. There's maybe a little more injury risk than with Allen and Mahomes, but mid second is where I'm anticipating them going. Also, Ed, we've come a long way as a high stakes community. I remember my third year of playing high stakes in 2011. remember seeing guys like Brady, Breeze, Rodgers go mid first round. So good that these guys can have these seasons and still not go above mid second, but that's where I see them.
So you'll say both two guys in the second round, and then probably Hurts in the third.
Yeah, probably more end of second, early third.
Yep. And Billy, what would you say?
I'm pretty much exactly where Chris is on that, because like he said, you're going to have that tier where it cuts off, and people are going to be like, well, this running back's here now, but I might get somebody very similar in the third round. I'll take my quarterback now, that type of thing. And I agree with him that Hurts is just a sliver behind them. The one guy that I think is going to get pushed down a little bit more is Burrow. And, if you can get Burrow, it depends where he's going, because, we all play this game where am I going to take a guy in the second if I know I could get Burrow in the fifth? If I know I can get Burrow in the fifth, I'm not taking a quarterback there probably, because Burrow's been pretty solid, and he's actually stepped up his running game as well. But I think Allen and Mahomes are definitely going to be second round picks just because they've proven it. Hurts a little bit later, and they have proven this. Last time I was on the Go District, we had a similar question to this, and I said they would get pushed down, but I've gone back on that because I just think that they've shown this whole year that if you're looking at around the leagues in the playoffs, almost all the teams have these four quarterbacks. And some 3 out of the 4, if there's 4 teams in it, have them. Sometimes all 4. It's those, counting Burrow in there as well. Those 4 quarterbacks. So it's pretty crazy.
I was going to give the audience homework, Billy, and tell them that was literally what I was writing down. Go to your leagues, because I know I'm in a league where you can still trade. And I'm trying to upgrade at quarterback, and I'm looking at all the bottom teams. That's usually where I'll go first. Not one of them has a decent quarterback. All the good quarterbacks are in the top teams, and I'm sure if you go check your leagues, you're going to see that a lot. And I'm going to jump in before Dan steals my thunder, or maybe Chris. Or no, Chris already went. I think that when we get into real drafting, especially the high stakes with the sharps, I think you're going to see some of these quarterbacks even tease with end of the first. And how that's going to happen is when one of these Buffalo Bills or KC brings in like either a crazy rookie receiver, or a Green Bay makes a big trade for a receiver or signs a big receiver. It's not Green Bay, but I'm thinking Rodgers because of last night. But one of these top quarterbacks, like even in LA, Herbert gets a couple big receivers out there, maybe another rookie receiver. You're going to see the value of these receivers go up as we get closer into the season. I wouldn't be surprised if we even see them go in the first round at the end.
I think that's interesting because I do think that there's potential that the 1-2 turn could be like a Kelsey Mahomes type. It could be a stacking type opportunity. I think that the most interesting thing was Billy bringing up Burrow. It's not. I think that it's pretty safe that you're going to see Mahomes and Allen in the second round. I think we're headed there. Early underdog best balls are kind of showing that. But I think it's where does it bring up that next group? Is the market going to push up like QB 3 through 8? Maybe some guys get pushed up artificially, and those would be the guys you kind of avoid. But I do think that the big 2 are locks for the second round. I think that Hurts is a lock for the third round. And I think that it's just, sometimes we see the market overreact. And I think this is something where you're not going to get opportunities to draft these guys a little bit later. I think that the market will really, really overreact next year. Dan, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the top 3 are definitely going to be worth a good bit. They've all scored already 450 points or more. Burrow running in 4th place is at 418, so he's not far behind. But then you drop down to like 350 points at QB5. So you're talking about a 100-point advantage right now through 14 games played for each of these quarterbacks. That's 7 points a game. That's a substantial advantage. And you have to weigh that against, like what you can get at other positions. Do you feel like you can get that kind of advantage at wide receiver still in the middle of the second round? Do you feel like you can get that at running back in the middle of the second round? If the answer is no, then you might want to think about quarterback, because also, there's the safety factor. I mean, the wide receivers and especially running backs, the injury risk tends to be much higher than it is at quarterback, though we have seen a lot of quarterback injuries this year. But if I don't get those guys, there are definitely some targets I'm going to have, that I think are going to be a little bit further down on ADP. I thought Billy was right on with Joe Burrow. If he's in the 5th round, I think that's a great value. Justin Herbert could be a great value. Everybody's going to be in on Justin Fields, I'm sure. But, Herbert went through half the season with, broken rib cartilage and didn't have, Mike Williams or Keenan Allen for half the season, all that kind of stuff. And he's still hanging out there at, like quarterback 7 or 8. So, I think the sky is the limit for him too.
Theo, I was just showing, sorry guys, you can see Josh Allen, the last draft. This is FFPC. It's the only one I had access to quickly here, but you could see already going in the first pick of the 3rd round in the last draft.
That was the post Thursday though, right?
That was the main event.
Yeah, so that was after the Thursday ones.
Good point.
But yeah, I think it's definitely one of the more interesting things. It was kind of like for years, Chris Vaccaro talked about this at length with us about how for years it was kind of like, hey, I'm going to be sharp by waiting, where now it's that's kind of gone out the window. You want the elite production from the QB position, and you can either hit the nuts and draft a guy a little bit later and maybe he beats his ADP, or you could take, Mahomes or Allen. And I realize it's kind of like, Joe Carlton in the chat brought up that, you better really nail the rest of your draft if you use 2nd round QB. However, in like the NFFC, if you can just hit on a top 2 QB, your win rates go up. You can be pretty good with certain rounds as long as you just nail that top QB spot. So I think that it's definitely an interesting one, and it'll be interesting. That's like the position I'm most interested in like these FFPC, NFFC early drafts. One other one-off position is tight end. We don't need to spend a whole lot of time on this, but Mark Andrews has had a kind of a setback season. He's down to about 13 points per game. I see Billy shaking his head. I had some Mark Andrews shares that did not exactly work out well either. And on the flip side, Travis Kelce has had one of the best tight end seasons of all time. I think as sure as we're sitting here, barring injury, Travis Kelce is the tight end 1 selected in all formats next year. Who is your early tight end 2? Start with Dan on this one.
Yeah, so I think my early tight end 2 is still probably Mark Andrews. I think really what happened there is, kind of their whole offense, or at least their passing offense is kind of falling apart. And assuming they fix that, it's probably going to be Andrews, because I think if, right now, basically any defense going up against Baltimore, they know they just have to stop Andrews, and they've got the passing game shut down because nobody else is doing the darn thing. So I don't think that'll be the case next year. I guess the better question for me is, now that I've said Andrews is going to be my tight end 2, will I draft him? And depending on where he falls in ADP, I'm thinking the answer might be probably not, because I think there's going to be a bunch of tight ends I like almost as well. And, I think some of them will be available a fair amount later. So I'm more likely to wait past Andrews if I don't get Kelce.
That's an interesting way of looking at it, Dan. It's more like, is he in kind of closer to the tight end 3 than the tight end 1, which would kind of be a whole different question. Chris, who's your tight end 2?
Sort of the same boat as Dan, whereas I want to say someone other than Mark Andrews, but I look at the list and it's Mark Andrews. And so I mean, honestly, for the rest of this playoff run, I can't distinguish Andrews from Ingram, Kittle, Hawkinson, Goddard, Schultz. Like, I don't care which of those guys I have. So I'm not paying a premium for Andrews next year. But it's probably not someone I'd be looking to draft until the 6th round or so.
Billy?
Yeah, it's it's Kelce probably in the 1st, and then literally the next tight end, and I don't know if we've ever seen this, could go in the 5th or 6th round. And then it could be a group of them, just like the group Chris said. The guy that I want to say, just to be different than Andrews, I get where everybody's coming from, is TJ Hawkinson. I think the offense, him being there for a full offseason, getting acclimated to everything, he's the guy I would really lean on. Goddard would be right there as well. Those would be the two that I would consider. But again, like Chris said, they're a distant second. And then Andrews is in that as well. And it's just a group about 5, maybe 4 or 5 guys, Kittle, Waller, whatever you want to put in there. But I would have to say Hawkinson, but it's, that could easily change. It's not one of those. It's one of those things where I'm probably not going to reach for the first guy, if that makes sense, of that second tier. I'll get the last guy of the tier because they're probably all about the same.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's clearly Andrews. I think that you kind of hit the nail on the head that it might be like the sizable gap between tight end 1 and tight end 2. And I love what Dan said about how maybe tight end 2 is like its own tier with a couple guys below. I'll say that the one wild card for me is George Kittle. If he has a few big smash games, I could see him having some juice. If he has a very good playoff run, a couple of 20-point games here or there. But it's going to take a whole lot for someone to take away tight end 2 from Andrews. Andrews still, if you look at like the first half of the season versus the second half of the season, he did show well to start the season, and definitely you feel safe about his target share. So it's Andrews. JD, anybody besides Andrews for your tight end 2?
Yeah, I want to piggyback. I was going to say the same thing, Theo. I think Kittle's going to win people some leagues this year. I put my money where my mouth is. I bought him Sunday morning in a tight end premium with my first, and he scored me a nice 27 points. I told you guys he was going to smash last week. It was going to be a Kittle smash game with Debo missing. He's gonna bulldoze through the playoffs with your team for the rest of the year, in my opinion. Him and McCaffrey. But I think going into next year, you guys nailed it. I'm looking at last year's draft boards, and yeah, you've got Kelsey, and then it's like Andrew, Pitts, Waller. You're pissed if you drafted any of those guys. You've got a nice juicy layer with like TJ Hawk, Schultz, Goddard, Kittle, like we talked about. Kmet maybe creeps up. Ertz showed us something, got injured. Njoku's a guy that Joe King brings up, I think is interesting. He's a guy that was kind of a tight end 2 favorite going into the season.
I mean, I just don't think he's going to be a low end tight end 1, and that's pretty much it. He didn't have the kind of smashing end of the season that we thought. The pro Njoku argument was he's going to have all these touchdowns with Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson hasn't looked good enough that we're going to elevate his pass catchers because of him. So I think that's kind of just another tight end in the
looking ugly, man. When I look at down and see Dan's Evan Ingram in round 13, I'm like, damn, that looks good right now.
Sure.
Yes,
All right.
that's the way you got to do it.
So we've come to it. I think at this point we're predicting the market. So we'll go around the horn, predict who's going to go 12th, and then we'll keep going around the horn, predict 11 and on. So Chris, who is being drafted 12th overall in NFFC?
I think 12th, we would likely start with a new face, just with Bijan Robinson, because I look back, every time there's been a running back prospect of his magnitude, going back to Trent Richardson, Zeke Elliott, Najee Harris, Saquon Barkley, that tends to be where they go each year, is that end of the first round. So obviously a lot to learn about landing spot and everything, but from everything I hear, he's sort of at that level as a prospect. And so I would honestly be surprised if he doesn't find his way to the end of first round fantasy drafts next year.
Love it. Billy, who do you have at 12?
Mine's not as sexy as Chris's.
It's an incredibly sexy start by Chris. Bijan Robinson, 12th overall. That's the new show title, JD.
I'm going to go with the guy who went from the beginning of the first to the end of the first now. For me, I'm going to still put Jonathan Taylor in the first round, and I'm going to put him at 12th. I think this first round is going to be stacked with receivers next year, excuse me. And I just think, for me, he's on this first round, he's my running back 4.
So we're doing the ADP one though, right? So
no, we're doing the ADP one. You're predicting the ADP, Billy, right?
Yeah, that's what I was.
Yeah,
okay.
That was his.
All right,
yeah,
got it. All right, just making sure.
Who do you have, Dan?
At 12, I've got Saquon. This is assuming that he ends up back in with the Giants or in another good situation. But I think Saquon probably makes the end of the first round.
For me, I had Travis Kelce, who last year was going at the, right around that 2-3 turn in NFFC. I think NFFC drafters are going to adjust, and he's going to sneak into the first round, almost 20 points per game this year, and such a wide gap between tight end 1 and tight end 2. Keep going with 11.
I'd go with Jonathan Taylor. Billy, I think, hit the nail on the head. I mean, this year was a mess for him, but with Hines out of the way, there's definitely potential for a bounce back.
Billy.
At 11, I have Devontae Adams. I think he's, again, I think this is pretty stacked with receivers. So I have Devontae Adams there right at 11.
Dan.
I put Kelce at 11. Same reasons as you had him at 12, Theo.
And I had Jonathan Taylor at 11. Dropped to 14 points per game this year. I think that there's not going to be nearly as much juice on him, but I think there's enough people that'll look at him as an end of the first round value for me. Go with 10. Chris.
Going with Travis Kelce. Pretty close to those guys at the end. I think some people might want to get a jump and maybe start those Kelce Mahomes stacks. So I'm going with Kelce.
Billy.
I have Saquon at 10. For a lot of the reasons that Dan listed. I just think if he stays in New York, he looked pretty good the other night, in my opinion. He has 1 full year under him now, where he's not been injured, and we'll see what he can do.
Dan.
I'm going A.J. Brown at 10. I think he's opened enough eyes. I think when people start looking at the stats, they're going to like what they see there, and he's going to be tough to keep out of the first round.
And for me, I had CeeDee Lamb at 10, which I think that some people were not overwhelmed by the production they got with him, but I think he's turned it around. He's seeing a high target share every single week, and he's up to 16.5 points per game. So I think that the market's gonna be increasingly into CeeDee Lamb as we move into the drafts. How about 9 overall, Chris?
Cooper Kupp. I think people are going to be a little leery with the injury of his own and Stafford, but I'm assuming Stafford comes back and he's number 9.
Billy.
Exactly what Chris said. Same thing. Cooper Kupp, Stafford. It's all dependent on Stafford with that pick, of course, but I think he's still going to be there at number 9 as well.
Right at Nick. Cooper Kupp at 9.
I had Cooper Kupp there too. So
damn,
to tell you that we're not as interesting as we thought, guys. We're all on Cooper Kupp there. That seems about right. Like, I feel like he's not going to be a 1-2 turn guy. 9 seems like people are going to kind of suck it up and draft them kind of area. How about 8th, Chris?
Devontae Adams. He's a little lower on Billy's list. I think people are going to look at Adams and Kupp and maybe realize Kupp has a little more upside, but they're going to go with the safer guy, I think.
Billy.
At 8, I have Travis Kelce. I think he is this gap. There is going to be some concerns with his age, another year older, but I think we were all saying that going into this year, and he obviously smashed everything. So he's the focal point of that offense with a great quarterback. So I think, and he's the gap between him and the second tight end is just that big enough that he warrants that spot.
Dan.
I had Devontae Adams at 8 as well.
I had A.J. Brown at 8. I wanted to rank him higher, but the presence of Devonta Smith kind of keeps him at 8 and not in that potential top 5. 17.9 points per game this year, just smashed. But I think 8th seems about right for him. How about the 7 spot, Chris?
Derrick Henry. I think that might even be a little higher in some of the earlier drafts. I think, we see it year after year as you get closer to the season. Nobody really wants Derrick Henry, so I think he may fall by then, but average it all together and we'll put him at 7.
Billy.
I have A.J. Brown at 7. AJ Brown for the reasons you said, Theo. He's, there is some little trepidation with Devonta Smith, but how many targets didn't he have? 16 targets on Sunday or something like that? I mean,
Yeah,
it's just a matter of him getting in the end zone. And we saw what he did against the Steelers and stuff. I mean, he can just have these monster 30, 40-point games. So, yeah, AJ Brown at 7.
And shout out to Lance, sports betting man, who always has trouble putting AJ Brown into his lineups. So, he's always complaining about it. So.
I don't think it'd be good.
Yeah,
that's a tough problem to have.
First world problems for sure. I put Diggs at 7.
Okay, I have Devontae Adams at 7. So I'm kind of right with you guys, but I would have Devontae a little bit ahead of AJ Brown. We've seen Devontae just smash. I don't think a whole lot will change in terms of next year in Las Vegas. They can't really make that many adjustments, and I think he's got another big year ahead of him. How about the 6th spot, Chris?
Austin Eckler, that's about where he went last year. See, not much reason for change. I think his game will age well. Is more of a receiving back than someone who necessarily needs to make people miss. He's more catches and power, and I think he'll no age concerns from him yet.
Billy,
that's my 6 as well. Austin Eckler, same kind of reason. He's just been very consistent. I do worry about him. He's a little smaller. He's got it banged up this past week, but you gotta give him his respect.
How about you, Dan?
Yeah, with Eckler, I mean, the dude has absolutely, he's been durable. So we haven't had too many concerns with that. But I have JT at 6, and that's, I think, higher than anybody else. But I think probably Indy is going to have a better quarterback of some kind, somebody that's more exciting than what they've had during JT's entire career. And I think that's going to push up interest in him, and people are going to be all over him again.
I had Eckler as well, and I wanted to have Eckler much higher. I just think that it's going to be a wide receiver heavy top 5, and I think Eckler is going to settle in, like Chris said, right about where he was taken this year. Chris, starting out the top 5.
Stephon Diggs. He's delivered all year. I do think at the end of the day, people might gravitate towards some of the younger receivers, but I still think he makes the top 5.
Billy,
I have Christian McCaffrey at 5. I just think, he's shown what he can do. I think if they give him just a little bit more, similar to what he had in Carolina, he could really smash. But he does enough every week to be up there.
How about you, Dan?
I have Eckler at 5.
And I have Jamar Chase at 5, which I wanted to be higher on him. I just think that some of the veteran wide receivers are a little safer bets, and I think that there's no T. Higgins opposite of them. So I begrudgingly have Chase at 5, but when it comes down to drafting, I might be drafting him like 2 overall. So he'll go 5 in the ADP. Chris, starting out our top 4 here.
I think you just outlined what I said, what I think will happen with Jamar Chase, but I have Jamar Chase, and I think people will logically come up with reasons other players might be more attractive there, but at the end of the day, that upside is going to entice people to take him a little bit earlier.
Billy,
I have Diggs at 4. Diggs at 4, just great player.
Easy pick, simple game.
That's right.
Dan, how about you?
Yeah, I got to say, Billy, you love a receiver who demands the ball, and Diggs definitely does that. So he's a Chris Carter or Randy Moss in that way. I have Jamar Chase at 4.
And I have Tyreek Hill at 4. So I think Tyreek Hill is going to obviously be higher with you guys, but I have him at 4. I just think the presence of Waddle, it's hard for me to take him in the top 3 if I'm taking another wide receiver on his team in the second round. So I have Tyreek Hill at 4 for early ADP. Chris, start us out with our top 3.
I'll start with Tyreek Hill, where you left off again. They've just made such a clear priority in getting him the ball each and every week. And when coaches are that devoted to feeding a wide receiver, I want it.
Billy.
Yeah, I have Jamar Chase at 3. It was tough between him and Hill for me, which obviously you can see where I'm going with my second pick. But yeah, it's tough because what you guys said about they have really good complementary receivers on that team. But yeah, I would take Chase at 3.
Dan.
I'm going McCaffrey at 3. I think with a full off season, they're gonna find a lot of creative ways to use him. Debo's great. Ayuk, solid receiver. Kittle, great. But the offense is going to run through McCaffrey.
And then for me, it was Stephon Diggs at number 3. I just think he's going to settle in as wide receiver 2 overall. He's super safe. He's been smashing this season. A lot to like about Stephon Diggs. I considered him at 2 as well. Chris, start us out with your number 2 predicted ADP.
One with Christian McCaffrey, and I don't think I'm necessarily going to take him there, but I think he's going to finish this season really strong without Mitchell, and he's going to put up some big numbers that are going to leave people with a good feeling going into the offseason. And so I think he'll be number 2.
How about you, Billy?
Tyreek, he would be my 2 just because of like the way they get him involved, and he's just there's very few people in the league that can do what he does, even on just a screen pass, could just take to the house any play.
Dan?
I have Tyreek at 2.
And I have Christian McCaffrey at 2. Kind of like what Chris said. I think that he's going to end the season in just a fantastic way, and I think that the allure of Christian McCaffrey is going to drag him into that top 2 picks. Chris, this is easy. I think we all have the same number 1 pick, guys.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone else is keeping track, but through a process of elimination, I'm going to go Justin Jefferson at number 1. The only guy who really jumped out as having the complete package of pass production, upside, and there's really nothing to pick apart in his game right now. So going with Justin Jefferson.
Billy, did you have any second thoughts, or just the easiest number 1 pick in a while?
I mean, it was between him and Calvin Ridley coming back for me, but
There you go, Billy, on brand.
Justin Jefferson. Of course, he's a freak. I mean, it's not even a question. The only concern I have with him is, every year the number 1 pick, it's something always happens, and I don't want to see that happen to Justin Jefferson because he's such a great player.
And hometown prejudice, or you were going Justin Jefferson no matter where you were living?
Yeah, Justin Jefferson didn't even make my top 12. Terrible player. Yeah, Justin Jefferson. Even if Baker Mayfield was his quarterback, I think he'd still be number 1 overall.
Whoa.
And how about Justin Jefferson going into the tent and scaring everybody and then coming out and smashing? The guy's he's the complete package. And, I think that this was also year 1. So Kevin O'Connell was attached to the 26 point per game Cooper Kupp season. And I think we could see that sort of a season out of Justin Jefferson next year. It's not going to take a whole lot for him to get to that 26 point a game range, just like 1 or 2 more plays a game. So
and Theo, if Fantasyland checks the receipts, I'm pretty sure we were calling that back in July last year.
We've been all over it in the GOAT district as our wide receiver 1 overall this year. I mean, we were right on a number of things, and that was one of the ones that was pretty easy to figure out. He's one of the best receivers I've ever seen play.
And I like Billy's call with TJ Hawk earlier, just growing in that offense, and that offense just all together going next year, I think is taking kind of that next step. It's going to be nice to see those pieces evolve even more.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, JD. I mean, it's just year 2. A lot of times we see a team take a big step with the head coach in year 2. You see with Philadelphia this year with Sirianni. Next year could be the case for Minnesota with O'Connell. So this is the fun part. We're going to give you our early ranks. So we predicted the market. So Chris, you can take it any way you want here. If you want to take it to 12, take it to 12, or give us whatever you want. Give us some of your early ranks.
12 to 1 or
no, we're not. We won't go around for this one. I think this one we can say your top 12.
Okay.
And then maybe JD might have a follow-up question for you.
Okay. 12, I'm going, a lot of these are fairly consistent with ADP, so I'll maybe talk a little more about the ones that aren't. But Jonathan Taylor at 12, Bijan Robinson at 11. Like I said, I'd just be very surprised if he wasn't in the first round next year. 10 is a guy who I'm probably not going to take 10 because I don't think I'll need to draft him that high, but I do still, I see no reason Josh Jacobs' role should diminish, and I don't see any reason he can't repeat if he's back with the Raiders in the same role. So 10, I'm going with Jacobs. 9, I'm going with Kelsey. 8, Christian McCaffrey. I still think Shanahan's in love with Elijah Mitchell from everything I've seen, and no matter how many times he hurts his MCL, I think he's going to play a role. 7, Cooper Kupp, again assuming Stafford back. 6, Devontae Adams. 5, Stephon Diggs. 4, Austin Eckler. 3, Jamar Chase. And I'll really say I don't actually like Jamar Chase that much next year. So as I was putting this together, it really made me realize that, in the NFFC, you have the ability to choose your draft spot. I will not be choosing near the top because the difference between some of these earlier guys and the later guys isn't significant to me. But 2, I'll go with Tyreek Hill. And then finally 1, Justin Jefferson.
Chris, let me ask you, we had a question in the chat earlier. You've mentioned Bijan twice now. What's your ideal landing spot? Where do you think he ends up?
Some of the ideal landing spots don't really have great means to acquire him, but he's obviously going to warrant a lot of draft capital. So whoever gets him is going to use him as a workhorse. I would love to imagine him with the Dolphins, but struggle to see how they get there, having lost their pick. Eagles, if they could find a way, that'd be fun. With Miles Sanders potentially leaving town, that'd maybe be my preferred destination, just to be a part of an offense that explosive.
No, I love that, Chris, with the Bijan Robinson. He's my dynasty RB1 right now. I'm flag planting on that. I think he's to me, JD, it's like, we don't want to see him land on a team that has like a really, really good running back. But if he lands on a team with a decent running back, I think he dusts that guy. He's 20 years old. He can catch the ball. If you spend like 5 minutes watching his highlights, it's unbelievable some of the things the kid can do. So, we talked about it on the show last week that Todd McShay had him going 5th overall to Philadelphia. So we saw Miles Sanders has 12 touchdowns right now. Bijan Robinson could lead the league in touchdown rushes. In rushing touchdowns next year if he lands in Philly. I know that they
you're not concerned. You're not concerned about Kenny Gainwell giving him some problems.
R.I.P. Kenny Gainwell if Bijan.
Unbelievable. He did not. I can't believe he gave us nothing this year. He looked so good for like a millisecond last year. And it's so disappointing.
We'll always have those 6 touchdowns is what the year, JD. Billy, give the people what they want. Give us your rankings.
All right, I'll go like Chris did. For me at 12 is Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think I just love what I see from him. He gets the volume. He can, he gets looked at in the end zone. So I put him at 12. At 11, I have Saquon Barkley. 10, I have Devontae Adams. 9, I have Travis Kelce. 8, I have, give me 1 second, please. Sorry about that. Back that up. 12, I have Amon-Ra St. Brown. 11, I have Devontae Adams. Barkley's at 10. Kelsey is at 9. See, and I had Kupp here at 8, but I wouldn't put him in there. So I'm going to take him out. Move Amon-Ra St. Brown up, and I'm going to move a new name into there. This is going to be out there, but I'm going to put him in there anyway. Never mind, no, I'm not. Never mind, no, I'm not. I'm gonna put Jacobs at 12. We'll keep it simple. Put Jacobs at 12. Jacobs at 12. Amon-Ra St. Brown at 11. Adams at 9. Barkley at Adams at 10. Barkley at 9. Kelsey at 8. AJ Brown at 7. I have Eckler at 6, McCaffrey at 5, and then I have it Hill, Jamar Chase. I have Diggs at 2, just because I prefer Diggs because I love the offense and he is the main guy, and then Justin Jefferson. But like Chris said, those first 4 are very interchangeable, and you'd be happy with any one of them.
JD, any follow-up questions for Billy?
I mean, you brought up Amon-Ra. I think that's I like that. Do you see is this with Goff still there? Do you see them doing anything at quarterback? Do you see maybe Jameson Williams kind of growth in that offense now that he comes in end of the season? Will that maybe take away from him, or you think he's safe with his role there and what we've seen so far?
I think he's safe with his role. I was worried about his role this year with they added Chark, and Jameson of course didn't play much, but they added Chark. Hawkinson was back for most of the year before he got traded. Swift was in there too, and he still performed. I just think he's the volume guy in that offense. He gets targeted in the end zone. I just love everything about the guy. So I think he's solid.
I like it. I had him in my top 12 too. Just love it.
Billy, people in the chat are saying 12 was a fake one. You actually have a flag plant, but you threw Josh Jacobs out to throw the people off. Is that
No. What happened was I was looking at this and I had Cup in there, and I don't really want Cup, and I messed up. So it's, I'll tell you the guy who I really wanted to put there, but he's got to get a better quarter. Like, if they could just get a great quarterback there, I would love to put Garrett Wilson at 12, based on everything I've seen. But he needs a quarterback, but he can't do that right now. So.
He'll be a lock. He'll be a lock second rounder though. It'll be fun if we just run it back tomorrow night and give our second rounders guys. But
that kid looks like Diggs to me.
He's incredible. He's an incredible player.
Look, he'll be complaining as much as Diggs did in Minnesota if Zach Wilson's still throwing to him. So.
Yeah. You ain't lying about that.
He play against a quarterback.
13.5 points last week with Zach Wilson is like getting 30 with a normal.
Pretty much, yeah.
That was good.
God, can you imagine him with Justin Herbert or something like that?
Oh my gosh! If he was with Justin Herbert, we'd be taking Garrett Wilson like 5th overall next year. Yeah, he'd be right there with Chase.
Right.
I got a question. Where do you guys fit Waddle, Billy? Where do you see Waddle? We talk about his effect with Hill, but we see the two producing when Tua's on his game, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think he'll be gone by the mid-second round at the latest. He'll be in the front part of the second round.
18 or lower, JD. I think he's like if you go running back, you can get Waddle and kind of cover up. Yeah. Chris and Dan.
Yeah, I'm the same on Waddle. I think probably 18 to 24. So my top 12, 12. I also have Amon-Ra St. Brown. 11. I've got AJ Brown. 10. I've got Cooper Kupp. 9. I've got Devontae Adams. 8. Kelsey. 7. Eckler. 6. McCaffrey. 5. Jonathan Taylor. 4. Diggs. 3. Tyreek. 2. Jamar Chase. And number 1, Jerick McKinnon. Justin Jefferson.
My biggest question with Dan, and even when he talked about ADP, is I'm surprised that he's got AJ Brown so low. Just again talking about players, big pieces in new offenses. We saw it this year in Philly, and you look at a guy who's given us 2 top 4 production in the last 3 weeks. Dan, why so low? I guess relative.
Yeah, I mean, to me.
For those who don't know, Dan's the original AJB at 101. Just for those who don't know, the OG AJB 101.
Yeah, I'm just not sure if he can get to Tyreek Hill, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson volume levels, and that is important. So that's what kind of keeps him down for me. And a lot of these guys I'm making some assumptions about that may or may not end up being faulty. Like Devontae Adams. Is Derek Carr there, or do they do something else at quarterback that could influence that? Kupp, same deal there. Some of these other, like McCaffrey, I could see some things might influence me differently on him. Eckler, same deal. So just outside of my top 12, I have Saquon Barkley, Tony Pollard, CeeDee Lamb, Derrick Henry, even Nick Chubb. I could see any of those guys kind of sneaking into the top 12 somehow, depending on how how things fall next season. But right now, if I had to pick it, those are my guys.
And AJB a little TD heavy. as the number 2 right now at the receiver position.
Right.
So for me, I'm leaving Cooper Kupp out of my top 12. A lot could change till next, spring and summer. But for early drafts, I don't want to have any Cooper Kupp early. So I'm leaving him out. My 12 is going to be CeeDee Lamb. I'm going to be higher on him than the market. I still believe in the talent, and I believe in how he's ending the season. My number 11 is Amon-Ra St. Brown. I would have liked to maybe even had him higher. I actually think that JD brings up Jameson Williams. I think having Jameson Williams opposite him is going to help him. I think that he's going to be able to just eat and eat underneath because of that deep threat. We saw, the Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. I think it could be like that next year in Detroit. I think Jameson Williams will be a wide receiver 2, and Amon-Ra St. Brown will be a wide receiver 1. Number 10 for me was Travis Kelce, basically just because of the NFFC. FFPC, I'm going to have him a lot higher. Devontae Adams, I had at 9. 8 for me is Jonathan Taylor. 7 is A.J. Brown. 6 is Austin Eckler. 5th is Christian McCaffrey. 4th is Tyreek Hill. 3rd is Jamar Chase. Number 2 for me is Stephon Diggs. I believe in everything Billy said about Diggs. I had him as, predicted him 3rd overall in my ADP. I'll be taking him even higher than that. And then number 1 is Justin Jefferson. JD, do you have a top 12 for us?
Yeah, I kind of penciled one together. Up here in Canada, we're not allowed to draft NFFC anymore. It kind of broke my heart because I love drafting on there back from the BB10 days even. But JJ, of course,
oppressive government up there to prevent.
Oh, don't even get me started. Don't even get me. That's why the wife and I are going back to Portugal in February, man. We're trying to relocate, man. This it's a little crazy up here. But anyways, JJ for sure at 1. For me, CMC, I'm going to put all the way at number 2, man. I think coming back off a fresh off season in this San Fran offense, I just think he's going to crush next year. And finishing strong, like I said, with Debo missing is going to help with that. Chase at 3, Diggs at 4, Tyreek at 5. I put AJB at 6, again, coming into that second season. I've got Eckler, Adams, Barkley, JT, Amon-Ra, and then I've got Kelce, just knowing that it's not tight end pre NFFC.
I love it. Was there any just kind of go around, does anybody have anybody who you really wanted to cram into that first round that you weren't able to in your ranks that you're just, I know like for me, it's definitely Cooper Kupp. Was there anybody like really close for you, Chris?
I was looking for an excuse for maybe Ramondre Stevenson, assuming Damian Harrison leaves.
I'm glad you brought Stevenson up. That's a guy I thought was interesting. And the other one actually is Pollard. I think if somebody mentioned in the chat, imagine, shout out to my buddy Joe, imagine him in Philly, guys. Imagine he somehow goes to Philly or something happens in Dallas where Zeke disappears, him and his, non-existent six-pack just disappear. I mean, imagine that, right? Pollard in control. I think his stock value skyrockets. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I think Pollard without Zeke is close to the early second, if not sneaking into some first rounds. It all depends on who they put behind him, though. If they draft one of these guys in Dallas, and I don't know. Pollard's just fantastic. It's just hard for me to see him in the first round. I think it would be more like a second round pick.
I'll go so far as to say, and this doesn't seem plausible. There are no outs in Zeke's contract for next year, but Pollard without Zeke, I would take him he would be my number 1 running back.
He's top for me. Is in the first half. I was gonna say I think he goes right to the first half of the first round. I'd probably take him behind McCaffrey.
So, Jerry Jones is going to trade up and get Bijan Robinson.
And just kill us all.
They're going to run the wishbone.
You're not lying because Jerry Jones, he knows what kind of marketing he'd get out of Bijan Robinson jerseys. So
he cannot resist those Big 8, the old Big 8 conference running backs. Dan, the Southwest guys. I remember Darren McFadden when McFadden was he sees one of those guys, he's got to go get him. Felix Jones, those kind of guys. So There's been the Bijan Robinson to Dallas rumors. I don't know. Tony Pollard's is fantastic, though. I don't know if I'd be quite as bullish as Chris, but he would definitely be a top 5 running back for me.
I got another name I'm surprised didn't come up at all. Just again, kind of looking at year 2 of something. Watson coming back. Nick Chubb right now, RB7. Do we see,
I did briefly mention him as somebody I would consider throwing in there, but things would have to break wrong for a couple of guys and break right for Chubb. But he will be losing Kareem Hunt most likely, so there is that.
When that news drops, right?
Yeah.
Could see
Billy,
that.
your thoughts on Chubb?
He's a lot like Derrick Henry to me.
Yeah. Derrick Henry light.
But he's in a offense. I mean, yeah, he's a lot like Derrick Henry to me, except that he does have Hunt. Derrick Henry pretty much gets all the work where, Kareem Hunt takes a few series away from Chubb here and there. The name that I didn't want to put in the first round, but he's been there for, I can't remember how many years in a row now, is Dalvin Cook. I mean, he's been there forever. And we know if that offense is what we think it could be, the running back makes it go. I believe he had like 27 on this past Saturday, but he just hasn't pulled it all together. Whether he, that one year he had all the touchdowns and everything, all was great. But, and then he had all the catches one year, but he can't put it all together in 1 year. So
I would not be surprised to see the Vikings move on from Dalvin Cook.
Yeah.
They can do it salary cap wise. It's not too tough. They might need to do it. I think either he renegotiates or they cut him loose.
Dan,
that's my early prediction.
Madison's also a free agent, correct? Or am I wrong?
Correct. Yeah. And if the Vikings re-sign him, I'm going to stick my head in the toilet and flush.
Well, I mean, Dan, with the RB free agency carousel that Fantasyland is just chomping at the bit for this offseason, we got to see, right? What do you think they do in Minnesota?
Bring on Tony Pollard, man.
I was thinking the same thing.
Can you imagine Pollard and Jefferson on the same team?
Oh my God,
it would be incredible.
And TJ Hawk.
I'd be wearing sweatpants 365 days a year. God.
That would be
Suede, right, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. My Vegas drafts would be NSFW, so.
A lot of Minnesota stacks.
Yeah, I don't know how I would manage getting both the first and second pick in the draft, but if there was a way to do it, I would do it. So the auctions, definitely.
I got a question, just because you're making me think. What's next year's Denver? What do you guys think is next year's Denver stack that everybody's just chomping at the bit for going into next year?
That's a tough one.
Oh man, that's I don't know. That's too hard for me. What offense are people going to be too bullish on next year?
Quarterback goes to New York or something like that.
I don't know. It's hard to say. It might, it might be Detroit because they're ending the season on such a tear that they could get overdrafted. I mean, we all love Amon-Ra St. Brown, but that's a hard one to predict.
Yeah,
I think it could be possibly Jacksonville.
Yeah.
That's a good one. That's a very good one, actually.
Because although Trevor's looking fantastic right now, and again you're bringing in Calvin Ridley, so you have Calvin Ridley, and you have Kirk and Zay Jones, and you have Evan Ingram and ETN. That's a pretty nasty group.
Yeah. And
they're it's looking good, but it might get a lot of hype in the offseason and just a little too much. I don't think it's going to collapse like Denver. I mean, to predict something like that is very hard.
Yeah,
to do.
you need horrible quarterback play and horrible play calling, both. To collapse the way Denver did. I don't think you're going to get that out of Jacksonville. I mean, they could disappoint for sure, but it's tough to say what place would have that nasty 1-2 combo.
Yeah.
Maybe Seattle if Geno Smith turns back into a pumpkin. I don't know.
As long as their target tree just remains at 2 players.
Exactly.
You guys think that's done? The Geno train? You think that's done?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think Geno's in a very interesting position because, if they make the playoffs, they're gonna have to re-sign him.
I think he'll be back.
Yeah, and even if they don't make the playoffs, I mean, even if they decide, what, we want to use our high draft pick on a quarterback, it would be pretty tempting to throw Geno on, because I think they'll have the salary cap room. They could sign him to they could tag him, give him a year at, I don't know what it is. What is it? 28, 30, 32, something like that million, somewhere in that range. And, just let their new quarterback sit back and learn, and let Geno run the offense for a year, potentially make the playoffs, and then move on. So, I don't know. I think anything's possible with Geno.
I'll throw I had originally thought Jacksonville too, but actually now I'm leaning towards 49ers. Like, what if?
There you go.
What if Lance is anointed the starter? I don't know how much he checks down to running backs, just based on the typical tendencies of most running quarterbacks. There's a scenario where McCaffrey, Ayuk and Debo could all suffer there.
I like what Todd just put on there. He said Arizona.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good one, because the Kyler meter is pointing way down for me.
So glad I traded him a few weeks ago, man. I just, that guy, everything off the field, on the field, Billy, I don't know about you, just don't like anything about it.
I say this every year at the end. I said it last year. I'm going to say it again this year, and then next year I'm going to draft him again, because
like that sheep gif where it's like stuck in the crack, you lift him out and he just jumps right back in. You're drafting Kyler.
Yeah, it'll be a little easier to stay away from Kyler with that knee injury, though, because he'll probably start off slow.
Do they have a new coach next year, a new head coach?
Could be. I mean, it
sure,
sounds like
right?
they're moving on from Steve Keim, maybe. So, if the general manager moves on, they may bring in a new general manager, and they could cut him loose. All
right, Theo, do we have anything left that we did not hit on? I know these guys have been super generous.
I think we covered everything. This was awesome. This was a whole lot of fun, and it was great getting your guys' opinions, not only on the ADP but also your ranks. I think that was super interesting to hear that.
Yeah, and like I said, whether you're playing NFFC, playing FFPC, or just playing in your home leagues, I think there's tons of value in tonight's show, and we appreciate Billy and Chris. Anytime you guys join us, we appreciate it. Guys, smash the like. Show your support for these guys. You've got Billy's Twitter handle on there at BiLLY88. Chris isn't sharing his. Maybe he's waiting till the fantasy playoffs are done to share his tips. Chris, what's your handle, brother? Let the people find you on Twitter.
At EiBL.
Beautiful, original. We love it. Simple, to the point. Chris, Billy, go ahead, buddy.
I thought Elon capped Chris's.
Had to get either an Elon or an FTX. I was gonna do an FTX run in the intro, and then my fucking something just lost it there. But guys, we appreciate you guys hanging out with us tonight. We appreciate the chat. The chat's always lit, but you guys were especially awesome tonight. The question, the comments, we appreciate you guys. Make sure you tune in. Theo, what do we have coming up in the district in the next little bit?
So I'm going to be doing the same thing on Thursday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon with Billy Muzio. He's going to be joining me, and we're going to be predicting ADP for some FFWC and also FFPC. So if you like today's show, we're going to have more of the same on Thursday. And then next week, Chad Schroeder should be on. I believe we're doing that on the 27th. We'll get a tweet out there to confirm the date. So this is we're bringing out the big guns. Hopefully you guys are in a lot of championship games next week, and hopefully our listeners are in a bunch of semifinals this week, and we're winning a lot of cash because we've certainly grinded in the district, and it's been a fun ride this year.
Dan, we're still chasing a couple in Dynasty. You and I are heads up in, like I said, that best ball the hard way, fighting for first. We got a few, still some fun things. Fantasy, anything you want to part Fantasy Land with before we close this thing out?
Start Jarrett McKinnon.
I love it, man. We got to end with that, guys. Good luck this week in the Money Week. We hope that you all get your W's. We'll check you all later.
Go district, you know the Pope listens. Dynasty, our religion, for the blokes missing. On all of these trades, on all of these plays, on all of these grades. By the end of the day, y'all getting played. So, what you gonna do next? Try to fill up that flex? Send the homie a text? That trash offer's the best? You try to make it complex, then they text you back. Now all of a sudden they don't make any sense. Broaden your horizons, boy. Dynasty's not for the Simons, boy. These trades not for consignment, boy. Respect your opponent, y'all some piranhas, boy. This my advice from me to you. Open up your cute little podcast queue. Search up GOAT District, my dude. Pop it in your ear, man. Y'all know what to do. It's the and I always be traded. And I always be traded. And I always be trading. Y'all try to betray them, but first you gotta bait them. Fish.
I get so caught up in the football, Theo. I completely forgot to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Hope you guys are safe. Have fun this holiday. Spend time with your family. You know, the guys on the screen, the guys watching. We appreciate all you guys, man. You guys have been awesome all year. We appreciate all your support. We're going to come back even stronger to help you win next year. Just wanted to make sure I relayed that message because I don't know if we'll be back before the big day.
Yeah, absolutely. Merry Christmas to everybody and happy holidays, happy Hanukkah, whatever it is you celebrate.
Hey Dan, how's your daughter?
She's all right. They've ruled out